The chandeliers sparkled like frozen rain above a sea of silk gowns and tailored suits. Laughter floated through the grand ballroom, where crystal glasses clinked and a string quartet played softly in the background. It was the wedding of Daniel Hayes, tech mogul, self-made billionaire, and now, newly remarried. He had spared no expense. Yet amid the glittering celebration, something strange caught his eye. Near the back of the room, where the waitstaff scurried between tables, a small figure, barely 3 feet tall, was quietly wiping down a glass-covered table with a napkin clutched in her tiny hands. It was his daughter. Emma. 5 years old. Wearing a flower girl dress. Cleaning tables. Daniel blinked, confused, then rushed across the room. Emma. What are you doing, sweetheart? He asked, kneeling beside her. She looked up with innocent eyes that somehow carried more wisdom than her years. Helping, she said simply. Helping who? The lady dropped things, Emma said, pointing to one of the catering staff, a woman in her 60s, red-faced, flustered, and clearly overwhelmed. She said she was tired and had too many tables. So I helped. Daniel looked at the woman. She tried to smile, embarrassed. I told her she didn't have to. But she wouldn't stop. A hush fell over Daniel's heart. It was the kind of silence that drowns out noise, even in a ballroom full of music. For a moment, the world narrowed to one small girl and her tiny act of kindness. This was his daughter, his real legacy. And here she was, quietly helping someone he hadn't even noticed. Suddenly, the marble floors and designer centerpieces seemed hollow. This celebration, grand as it was, felt painfully distant from something real. He lifted Emma into his arms. Can you tell me why you helped her, sweetie? Emma rested her head on his shoulder. Because she looked like Grandma when she was tired. And I missed Grandma. Daniel felt something crack open inside him. His mother had passed just a year earlier. A waitress her whole life. She used to come home with aching feet, fingers stained with coffee and bleach. She'd raised him on tips and second-hand clothes and relentless love. He remembered how, as a child, he'd sit in the corner of the diner where she worked, coloring quietly while she poured coffee and smiled through exhaustion. And now here he was, at the peak of success, and he hadn't even noticed the tired woman cleaning up after his celebration. His daughter had, though. That was wealth. Daniel stood up, Emma in his arms, and walked to the microphone, interrupting the music. I want to thank someone very special tonight, he said, his voice steady but thick. My daughter Emma. Heads turned. People smiled politely, assuming it was just a proud father's toast. But Daniel continued, voice stronger now. She reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That success isn't about how high you climb, but about how gently you reach down. He paused. There's a woman here tonight who works harder than most of us can imagine. I didn't see her. But my daughter did. And for that, I owe them both more than I can say. Silence fell. Then applause. Real applause, not the polite kind, but the slow-building kind that comes when hearts recognize something true. Daniel turned back to the catering woman, who stood frozen in shock. May I ask your name? He said gently. Lucille, she whispered. Well, Lucille, he said, pulling out an envelope from his suit pocket, I'd like to offer you something. Not as a handout, but in memory of a waitress who raised me with everything she had. This is a check for $250,000. To rest. Or to start something new. Or just, to breathe. Lucille gasped. Someone started crying. And Daniel, for the first time that day, felt like he was truly celebrating something. The story of Daniel Hayes' wedding made headlines. But not because of the venue, or the guest list, or even the bride's dress. It went viral because of a little girl who cleaned a table, and a man who remembered what truly mattered. In the end, it wasn't about the money. It was about a child's instinct to care. About how the smallest hands can show us the biggest truths. And how the richest moments in life aren't bought, they're felt. Sometimes, it takes the eyes of a child to remind us how to be human.